Very physical game. It was really hard to get from A to B. But in the end, I think just our resiliency paid off and a little, like you said, a bit of our experience.
Picture this. The most dominant rookie in WNBA history just delivered a devastating blow that sent shockwaves through the entire women's basketball establishment. 2 minutes ago, Caitlin Clark broke her silence about the league's catastrophic ticket price collapse, and her target? None other than WNBA legend Sue Bird. What Clark said next didn't just ruffle feathers. It exposed the brutal reality that has league executives scrambling behind closed doors. The numbers don't lie, and they're absolutely staggering. WNBA tickets that once commanded premium prices are now being sold for as little as $5. $5! That's less than a fast food meal, less than a coffee at Starbucks, less than what most people spend on a single mobile game purchase. But here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just about empty seats or disappointed fans. This is about a seismic shift in power, influence, and respect within women's professional basketball, and Caitlin Clark just threw down the gauntlet in the most public way possible. The setting was perfect for drama. Clark was leaving practice when reporters cornered her about the recent Sky versus Liberty debacle, the game where only 200 fans showed up to what should have been a marquee matchup. The arena looked like a ghost town, with vast sections of empty seats creating an eerie silence that no professional sports league wants to see. When asked about Sue Bird's recent comments defending the current state of the WNBA and dismissing concerns about attendance, Clark's response was swift, calculated, and absolutely ruthless. "It's interesting," Clark began, her voice carrying that familiar edge that opponents have learned to fear. "When legends of the game try to explain away $5 tickets as if that's somehow normal or acceptable. I mean, I get it. Some people are more comfortable with mediocrity than others. But when I step onto that court, I'm not playing for $5 expectations. I'm playing to elevate this entire league." The shot heard around women's basketball had been fired, and Sue Bird, the four-time WNBA champion, the face of the Seattle Storm dynasty, the player who many consider the greatest point guard in league history, suddenly found herself in Clark's crosshairs. But this wasn't just a random attack. This was strategic, calculated, and it revealed tensions that have been brewing beneath the surface for months. See, Sue Bird has been vocal about supporting the WNBA's traditional structure, defending veteran players' roles, and pushing back against what she calls unrealistic expectations for immediate change. She's argued that the league's growth should be steady and measured, that ticket prices reflect market realities, and that newer players need to pay their dues before expecting superstar treatment. It's the voice of establishment thinking, the perspective of someone who built their legacy in a different era of women's basketball. But Caitlin Clark represents something entirely different. She's the embodiment of transformation, the catalyst that's forcing everyone to reconsider what the WNBA can and should be. When Clark plays, something magical happens. Arenas that typically host modest crowds suddenly become electric environments. Television ratings spike from respectable to remarkable. Social media explodes with highlights and discussions. Merchandise flies off shelves. Corporate sponsors start paying attention in ways they never did before. The contrast couldn't be more stark. During Clark's rookie season, Indiana Fever games became must-see events. Tickets that normally sold for $20 or $30 were suddenly commanding prices north of $800 on the secondary market. Fans who had never watched women's basketball were planning their weekends around Fever games. The atmosphere was intoxicating, the energy was palpable, and the financial impact was undeniable. Then came the reality check. Games without Clark told a completely different story. The Sky versus Liberty matchup became the perfect example of this harsh reality. What should have been a showcase between two competitive teams instead became a cautionary tale about the WNBA's fragile ecosystem. Those 200 scattered fans weren't just a disappointing attendance figure. They were a visual representation of the league's dependence on star power, specifically Clark's star power. The numbers behind this collapse are truly staggering. Television viewership for games featuring Clark averages around 1.8 million viewers. Impressive by any standard and astronomical by WNBA historical norms. But games without her? The numbers plummet to fewer than 850,000 viewers. sometimes dropping even lower. It's not just a decline. It's a cliff dive that leaves network executives questioning their investment strategies and league officials scrambling to find solutions. This is where Clark's comments about Sue Bird become particularly pointed. Bird has consistently argued that the league's success shouldn't rely on any single player, that building sustainable growth requires developing multiple stars and maintaining consistent quality across all teams. It's a noble sentiment and theoretically sound, but it runs headlong into the brutal realities of modern sports entertainment. I respect what previous generations built, Clark continued in her impromptu press conference. But I also recognize that respect doesn't fill arenas or create the kind of excitement that brings new fans to women's basketball. When tickets are $5 and arenas are still empty, maybe it's time to admit that the old approach isn't working. The implications of this public disagreement extend far beyond personal animosity between two players from different eras. This is really about competing visions for the future of women's professional basketball. Bird represents continuity, tradition, and gradual progress. Clark represents disruption, transformation, and immediate impact. Both approaches have merit, but they're fundamentally incompatible in their current forms. What makes this conflict even more compelling is the generational divide it represents. Sue Bird built her career during an era when the WNBA was fighting for basic recognition and respect. Players like Bird, Diana Taurasi, and Candace Parker had to prove that women's basketball deserved attention, that the product was worthy of investment, that female athletes could captivate audiences just like their male counterparts. They succeeded in establishing the league's credibility, but they did so within certain constraints and expectations. Caitlin Clark entered the league with a completely different set of circumstances and expectations. She arrived with unprecedented college popularity, massive social media followings, and commercial appeal that veteran players had spent entire careers trying to build. Her success wasn't gradual or hard-fought in the traditional sense. It was immediate, overwhelming, and game-changing from day one. The ticket price collapse that sparked this confrontation is really a symptom of a much larger issue. When the WNBA can't maintain consistent fan interest without its biggest star, it exposes fundamental weaknesses in the league's marketing, product development, and fan engagement strategies. $5 tickets aren't just about supply and demand, they're about perceived value. And right now, the league is struggling to maintain that perception when Clark isn't on the court. But here's where Clark's criticism of Bird becomes particularly cutting. Bird's defensive stance about current conditions essentially asks fans to accept lower standards, to be satisfied with modest attendance and limited excitement. Clark's approach demands more from the league, from other players, from the entire ecosystem surrounding women's basketball. She's not content with gradual progress when transformational change is possible. The timing of this public dispute couldn't be more significant. The WNBA is at a genuine crossroads, caught between its established identity and its explosive potential. Clark's rookie season proved that women's basketball can generate mainstream excitement, commercial success, and cultural relevance. But it also revealed how dependent that success has become on a single player's presence and performance. Industry insiders are now divided into clear camps. Some support Bird's measured approach, arguing that sustainable growth requires developing multiple stars and avoiding over-reliance on any individual player. Others align with Clark's more aggressive stance, believing that the league should capitalize on its current momentum and push for immediate, dramatic expansion of its reach and influence. The financial implications are staggering. Games featuring Clark generate significantly more revenue through ticket sales, concessions, merchandise, and corporate partnerships. Her absence doesn't just mean lower attendance. It means reduced revenue streams across multiple categories. When tickets drop to $5 and arenas still remain empty, it signals a crisis of interest that threatens the league's long-term viability. Clark's public challenge to Sue Bird represents more than just a disagreement between players. It's a fundamental question about the WNBA's future direction. Will the league continue operating within its traditional constraints, accepting modest success and gradual growth? Or will it embrace the transformational potential that Clark represents, even if that means acknowledging uncomfortable truths about its current limitations? The answer to that question will likely determine whether the WNBA becomes a truly mainstream entertainment product or remains a niche offering with dedicated but limited appeal. Clark's willingness to publicly challenge respected veterans like Bird suggests she's not content with the status quo. And her track record of delivering on bold promises means the league would be wise to listen carefully to her perspective as this drama continues to unfold. One thing is absolutely certain. Caitlin Clark has fundamentally changed the conversation about women's professional basketball, and she's not finished making waves. Her latest comments about Sue Bird and $5 tickets might seem like simple trash talk, but they represent a much deeper struggle for the soul and future of the WNBA. The league now faces a choice that will define its trajectory for years to come. Will it embrace the disruption that Clark represents, or will it try to contain her influence within traditional structures? The answer may determine whether the WNBA thrives as a major sports entertainment property or continues struggling with $5 tickets and empty arenas.